mu7 kaweddemu dda embeera eyongedde okumweraliikiriza oluvannyuma lw'okukwata His Excellency Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu olunaku lwe yava mu ggwanga erya South Africa ng'akomawo mu ggwanga erya Uganda. Munnamateeka wa His Excellency Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu ali mu nsonga eza ICC avuddeyo n'ategeeza nti ensonga ezo ezaakolebwa ku Kyagulanyi Ssentamu zonna baazifuna bulungi era zonna zaagattibwa dda ku bujulizi obumuvunaanibwa mu ICC nga weewaawo baali balina obujulizi obumala naye ate bagamba nti kati buli kigenda mu maaso mu ggwanga erya Uganda bakimonitalinga nga kiba kibayamba okugatta obujulizi ku obwo bwe balina bongere okukwata mwami mu7 nga talina kyakwekwasa nti obujulizi obuliyo babufeekinga bufeekinzi. Kati ebigenda mu maaso byonna mu ggwanga Uganda abakugu babeera babirondoola okumanya mwami mu7 butya bwe yeeyisa ku bannayuganda, mwami mu7 butya bwe yeeyisa ku kulinnyirira eddembe ly'obuntu, mwami mu7 lwaki ayogerwako ng'omuntu omutemu. Bannayuganda bagamba nti ono mwami mutemu nnyo mu kutemula bannayuganda yeekansa. Abazungu baali balowooza nti baba muwaayiriza buwaayiriza nga bannayuganda bamukoowa bukooyi naye balaba ebikolwa bino ebyatuusibwa ku His Excellency Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu ng'ateekebwa mu mmotoka ng'omubbi kyongera obbakakasa nti olaba omuntu ali mu kifo ekinene bwe kityo bamukwata bwe batyo olwo omuntu wa wansi atalina bwogerero ye banaamuyisa batya. Kyewuunyisa nti bannamawulire ku olwo baawambibwa ne bakubibwa emiggo bubi nnyo ne kamera zaabwe ne zaasibwa. Munnamateeka wa His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu avuddeyo n'atangaaza n'agamba nti okukuba munnamawulire oba okoze musango munene lwa nsonga emu nti munnamawulire akkirizibwa okukola emirimu gye nga tewali amukuba ku mukono kubanga gwe mulimu gwe yasoma. Ku kya munnamawulire Ssesanga eyabuuzibwawo gye buli eno nga tebamanyi na bwa gy'ali, munnamateeka akyogeddeko n'agamba nti okuwamba bannamawulire obanga abaggyako eddembe lyabwe ng'obagaana okukola emirimu gyabwe tolina nsonga lwaki owamba munnamawulire n'omubuzaawo ne gye buli eno nga tanamanyikibwako waali. Omuntu bw'abanga akwatiddwa ng'alina omusango gw'avunaanibwa lwaki tomutwala mu kkooti n'awozesebwa ne gumusinga n'asibibwa? Lwaki omuwamba n'omubuzaawo nga bannannyini ye abamulinako obuvunaanyizibwa nga tebamanyi watuufu wa waali ne gye buli eno? Tugenda mu nnaku ziwerera ddala 6 kati nga tetumanyi mayitire ge. Wabula munnamateeka agamba nti ebyo byonna mwami mu7 abikola yalowooza yawangula kubanga ye yalaba nti embeera gye yali agezaako okutaasa bannayuganda buteekalakaasa naye ebyo byonna byegatta ku bujulizi obumuvunaanibwa mu ICC era agamba nti kaseera buseera ICC egenda kubayita mwami mu7 yennyonnyoleko ku nsonga ezimwogerwako ne mutabani we bwe bazze bakola okutulugunya bannayuganda naye n'asaba bannayuganda nti nammwe mulina okwebeereramu ne mulaga embeera nti omusajja empisa gy'abayisaamu si ya buntu kubanga temugenda kutula obutuuzi muzinga emikono mulowooze nti wali omuntu alina obbajjirako gavumenti. Buli bannayuganda bwe mutula obutuuzi ne muzinga emikono beeri balowooza nti kirabika muli bulungi omuntu abakulembera mu mwetaaga kyokka nga mukaabira mu kimugunyu buli kaseera mugamba embeera gye tuyisibwamu si ya buntu naye temuvuddeyo kulaga mbeera nti mukooye. Bwe munaateekawo embeera ne mulaga nti mukooye awo n'abantu basobola okuwulira ne bagamba ekitegeeza bannayuganda bulijjo bayisibwa bwe bati weewaawo nti balibba ebituufu ebigenda mu maaso babimanyi era babiraba ogwabwe bagukola naye bannayuganda ne bagamba nti nammwe temutula butuuzi kusirika ng'eddembe lyammwe lirinnyirirwa mulina okuteeka mu nkola ne mulaga nti omusajja tumukooye tukooye okulinnyirira eddembe ly'obuntu engeri eyo ekyoyonoonere. Kati mwami mu7 musajja watu lwakeesa lwabala kubanga ebintu byamwonoonekera dda ali ku bunkenke n'okusinga bannayuganda obunkenke bw'abataddemu yeewaana nti afuza bannayuganda emyaka egyo gyonna naye ate naye yennyini yakukkuluma agamba naye bwe lwaki Kyagulanyi Ssentamu onfuze kubanga tafunangayo opposition emufuga nga ya His Excellency Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu nti emubuzizzaako emirembe takyalina bwekyusizo eyali yegirisiza mbazungu nga akasente akasabanga bw'ayagala takyasobola na kulinnyawo bulinnya kigere wadde ne ssente ze baalinga bamuwa baazimuggyako dda. Kati awategedde nti okufuga omuntu obwenkanidde awo tekinyuma kubanga naye Kyagulanyi Ssentamu enfuga gy'amufuzeemu kati amufugira wano mu Uganda takyekyusa takkirizibwa kufulumawo era ensi zasobola okugendamu kati ze z'abannakyemalira banne.
So all the mu7 government, really gang, has done is make Bobi much more important even than he was. It's demonstrated to the international community that Uganda's government under mu7 is a gang of thugs. All they had to do was let Bobi come off that plane, greet people at the airport, and respect the rights of the people of Uganda. And then mu7 would have been seen as a proper president who respects the law. Instead, what he did was he acted as a criminal, and he made the world pay attention even more to the corruption and abuse in Uganda. So this was actually an important victory for the opposition parties in Uganda today. Museveni has lost out very badly. And part of the proof of how important this was and how harmed Museveni is now by it is that they released Bobi from house arrest within one day. They knew they couldn't keep him there any longer because it was creating an international incident. Now, Bobi Wine and the NUP will continue their campaign under the law. And that campaign is going to grow even stronger now that Museveni did this. Dictators never learn their lesson. But JB, it does show us how very important Uganda has become internationally because of Bobi's campaign and the dictatorship. Bobi is now seen as a statesman challenging this dictatorship. And that's why all those news outlets around the world covered this so quickly.
You were still saying something?
Yeah, JB, I just want to say you're absolutely right about the importance of all that news coverage.
Yes, then also, you remember there was the before, during, and after. And in all these scenarios, over 300 Ugandans across the country, of course in different parts of Uganda, were arrested, and actually most of them are still missing, including a one former BBS Terefina journalist by the name Sesanga Bate. Up to now, no one knows where he is. No single communication has been made between his family and where he is, friends, lawyers. No one knows where he is, and of course he joins a list of very many others that are still missing upon their abductions, including the 300 that were arrested. Can these unauthorized arrests be considered as evidence in the ongoing ICC case against Museveni and his son? Like you had said previously, remember the last time you were here, you said whatever the Museveni government does, it can fuel up the ongoing case at ICC. Can you take us through that?
Yeah, you might say, JB, that General Museveni and his son are the gift that keeps giving. Every time they do this, they help our case internationally. So every time they abduct new people, every time they do what they did to Bobi, every time they beat the gate men, every time they make a journalist disappear, all of that is new evidence to go to the court. And more of it is being captured on video. So there's more and more evidence of the people who are doing these things. And so yes, each of these disappearances, beatings, abuse, torture, all of that will form new evidence to the ICC. And so we're going to start gathering those affidavits and supplementing to the ICC. So all Museveni and his son Muhuzi are doing is creating more evidence.
When Bobi Wine was coming back to Uganda, remember he did not go alone in the diaspora. He went with some leaders of the National Unity Platform, including a honorable member of parliament by the name of Derek, who actually captured the video that went viral. You know, the video that Al Jazeera used, Reuters used, and a couple of international media platforms. The communication has been made between his family and where he is, friends, lawyers. No one knows where he is, and of course he joins a list of very many others that are still missing upon their abductions, including the 300 that were arrested. Can these unauthorized arrests be considered as evidence in the ongoing ICC case against Museveni and his son? Like you had said previously, remember the last time you were here, you said whatever the Museveni government does, it can fuel up the ongoing case at ICC. Can you take us through that?
Yeah, you might say, JB, that General Museveni and his son are the gift that keeps giving. Every time they do this, they help our case internationally. So every time they abduct new people, every time they do what they did to Bobi, every time they beat the gate men, every time they make a journalist disappear, all of that is new evidence to go to the court. And more of it is being captured on video. So there's more and more evidence of the people who are doing these things. And so, yes, each of these disappearances, beatings, abuse, torture, all of that will form new evidence to the ICC. And so we're going to start gathering those affidavits and supplementing to the ICC. So all Museveni and his son Muhoozi are doing is creating more evidence.
When Bobi Wine was coming back to Uganda, remember, he did not go alone in the diaspora. He went with some leaders of the National Unity Platform, including a honorable member of parliament by the name Derek, who actually captured the video that went viral. You know, the video that Al Jazeera used, Reuters used, and a couple of international media platforms. In that video, some of these perpetrators are captured live, and you can easily identify their faces. Now, here's the question. If such kind of violations are well profiled, can these people be added on the list of most wanted?
You know, we've said, JB, all along that we are watching. And every time a soldier, a police officer, an officer, a commander, no matter what rank they are, does these, they can and will be reported as subjects of the ICC complaint. And so all of these people, when they do these things, when they grab a man off the street, when they grab Bobi off a plane, when they throw him down, when they abuse him, all of these people will be subject to the ICC. And people need to start to understand there'll be a day of reckoning. It takes the ICC time, but that day will come. And you know, there's something else, JB. Eventually, Museveni and his son will no longer be in power. All dictatorships die at some point. Whether it comes through the next election, whether it comes because Museveni has a heart attack, maybe there'll be a revolution, who knows? But there comes a time when dictators leave office or die or are forced out. And then the courts will come back and will do their jobs again. And all of these people, these soldiers, these officers who've been doing these things, running these torture centers, abusing people, torturing them, they will go before the courts of Uganda once this dictatorship is gone. And so people need to understand that when they do these things today, they think they have impunity. They think they can't be touched. Well, under the dictatorship of Museveni, maybe they can't be touched. But when Museveni is gone, the courts will start to do their job again in Uganda. And all those people who think they can act outside the law today will be in the dock tomorrow. And people need to understand that. You know, remember East Germany was under the communists? And they shot people at the Berlin Wall. They killed people who tried to escape. When the communists fell, those commanders and those soldiers went on trial. And they went to prison for shooting those people as they tried to leave East Germany. Every dictatorship ends up in court. Once the dictator falls, the commanders, the police, they go on trial. And so I want people in Uganda to know, I want those police and soldiers and commanders to know, there will be a day when they will be on trial in a proper court of law for the things they've done. And their only protection is to stop doing them. Just stop doing them. Stop arresting people, beating people, torturing people. Stop listening to these orders. They are illegal. And someday those who do them will be in court in Uganda once this dictator is gone. And that day will come.
Very many people are waiting for that day. Very many are praying for such day. And of course, just like you said, that day will come. Bruce, I want you to take us through the international laws and regulations governing the airports. I want you to relate it to the incident that took place on the 5th of October when His Excellency Bobi Wine was grabbed off the plane. What are some of those international regulations and laws, and how do they affect the Ugandan government in this case?
Yes. Thank you, JB. I think you may have cut out on my end for a moment. The international law is very, very clear. We have a host of laws that govern governments. There's the UN Convention on civil and political rights, for example. There's the ICC convention. There are numerous what we call customary international laws. All of these things govern governments. And first and foremost among them, every government must respect the political rights of the people of its country. They must let those people have political expression. They must let political opponents campaign and oppose the government. They must let the press be free. International law mandates all of this. And the Uganda Constitution mandates it. What Museveni is doing today is violating the Constitution. There will come a time when he will, or his officers and commanders will be in court because they're violating that Constitution. So international law and Uganda law together are very powerful tools. And everything they do to stop campaigning, to stop the free press, to intimidate journalists, to arrest journalists, like the BBC journalist who's missing, all of that violates international law, and all of it violates the Uganda Constitution. You know, I want to add one more thing, JB, in terms of what you said about, you know, Ugandans want that day to come. You know,
Yes.
I've said this before on the show. That day will come only if Ugandans make that day come. You know, the ICC can prosecute and governments can speak, but only inside Uganda can change really come. You know, and a lot of those young people who support Bobi, they must register to vote because there will be another election. But if they say, I'm not going to vote, I can't make a change, they're handing power back to Museveni. So people got to be registered to vote for that next election. And people have got to protest. They've got to go to the streets. They've got to stand in the streets. Yes, a few people might get beat up by the police. That's true. But only a few. And people have to join in the streets, in their town, in Kampala, etc. You know, when Bobi goes out in Kampala, people need to follow him. People need to show the government the support that there is. It's never going to happen if people wait for others to do it. You know, that's why when those crowds followed Bobi in the campaign across the country in August and September, that was the way to do it. People must come out. They must come out and support. That's why the government arrested Bobi, because they wanted to stop people from massing and meeting him as he came off the plane. That's why they stopped it. And that shows us how important it is for the Ugandan people to be there on the streets speaking and protesting. Nothing is more important than that. You know, if 1,000 people would get in front of the State House in Kampala and sit there in a sit-down protest, that speaks more than any court case internationally. If 10,000 people would go to the State House and sit there in silent protest, that speaks immense volumes. That's how dictators leave power. So the Ugandan people have got to take what we've started and what they've started and continue it and keep it going and have courage.
On that note, as we finalize, there are some Ugandans, of course, as a media personality, I always interact with the different kinds of Ugandans in the comment section, on the streets. And some think that someone in America is going to come and help them with Museveni in Uganda. Just explain briefly as we wind up to these people who think that someone in America or Europe or China, wherever, that is going to come and help Ugandans with Museveni.
Well, JB, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you very well.
Look, I can do what I do as a lawyer.
Yes.
But I can't come from the outside and come into make that change. It's not for me in America to make that change. It's for people in Uganda to make that change. You know, I can do what I do as a lawyer. I can use my skill internationally. I can give guidance and advice, and I do that actually. But it's got to be people in Uganda who do this. I'm on the outside speaking, and I think that's very important. But my job is to motivate people in Uganda to do their job, not to come from America and save Uganda. No dictator was ever removed by outsiders. It only happens when the people of the country have, I'm fed up and I'm not going to take it anymore. And they start protesting and massing. Only if the people do that. And remember, the police can beat up a few dozen people. But if 10,000 people gather, they can't get rid of 10,000 people. They might shoot one or two people, I know, and that would be horrible. But they can't shoot everyone. They can't beat up everyone, and they can't arrest everyone. mu7 does that to terrorize people, to keep them home. You've got to say, I'm going to get out on the street. I'm not going to stay home. Because only if Ugandans do that can democracy come. Not from the outside, not from Bruce in America, not from Joe Biden, or not from the ICC either. It's only going to happen by people in Uganda who use what we've started